So, but your faces are not. This thing just tapes the slideshow and me, if you look at any of them. All right, so today we'll be talking about the nervous system. And my goal today is to give you an overview of the concept of how your nervous system works without getting too weighted down in terms, so that you understand the terms that you read in your book. Because otherwise what happens is when you read through these chapters in your book, you just get lost in this sea of like words, and you kind of memorize what they mean, but you don't know how they fit into an overall big picture. And it's very important actually as a massage therapist that you really understand how the nervous system itself works theoretically, so to speak, instead of what we name each part of it. There will be that too, because that's what you're going to get tested on eventually and things like that. Not at the end of the year. Remember, we will never test you on this again, basically, after this course is done. But let's talk about the nervous system. So there is a need to control the functions of your body. And there are two systems that help you do that. Now, before I go into these two systems, and more specifically the nervous system, I want to remind you that these systems were made up. I don't mean that the human body was made up. What I mean is somebody came along and said, oh, those muscles are really cool. Let's talk about the muscular system. Remember, they said the bones are really cool. They said they'd talk about the skeletal system. But as I pointed out to you, the skeletal system makes blood for the circulatory system. So why isn't it in the circulatory system? Because somebody said it wasn't. And it makes white blood cells for your immune system. But we don't talk about that, right? So there's overlap to these. What somebody did was try to chop up all the miraculous things the human body does and talk about them in various systems. But you have to remember these systems are extremely integrated. And probably nothing is more integrated with all your other systems than the two control systems that run your body. One is the endocrine system, and you're going to learn about that after the break. And the endocrine system is essentially your hormones that control your body. And when we hear hormones, we think of like puberty and things like that. But you have hormones are really actually chemical messengers, and they turn on and off functions in your body of all the cells. And you use hormones throughout your whole life for all sorts of things, to control blood sugar rates and actually in everything. Salt variants in your body, which, by the way, if they change a small degree, you can die. They control how quickly you repair, how slowly you repair, growth, all sorts of things. Anyway, that's the endocrine system. And it's quick. It's pretty quick, by the way. You guys have experienced the endocrine system being pretty quick when somebody jumped out and scared you, and you got that rush of adrenaline. Adrenaline is a chemical messenger. And your body injected it into your bloodstream, and you got it pretty quick. Not as quick as the nervous system, though. The nervous system's even faster. So that adrenaline kicking on when you get scared is getting you ready to run or fight. The endocrine system often works with the nervous system, but the nervous system is even faster. And very simply put, but fairly accurately, your nervous system is a system of wires that connects your brain to every single part of your body. Very simply put, the nervous system is a system of wires that connects your brain to every part of your body and every part of your body to your brain. Now, there are billions of these wires. Billions. And I want you to understand the wires. This is a piece of paper here. Ordinary piece of paper. The wires are smaller than 1,000th of the width of this piece of paper. So a single nerve wire is smaller than 1,000th of the width of a piece of paper. You know how thin paper is. We're talking 1,000th of that. So if you can divide that width into 1,000 pieces, nerve fibers are about that size. They are very, very, very tiny wires, but they really are wires, and they're living wires. And I'll explain that in a second. But let's talk about what these wires have to do, because it's extremely important that you get the basic concept here. Go ahead and touch your fingers together. The only reason you know this is occurring is because of your nervous system. If you didn't have your nervous system functioning, and you couldn't see this or feel this or both, most of you can do both, I hope, you wouldn't know this was happening. You literally wouldn't. And the fact that you can tell your fingers to rub together is because of your nervous system. Not kind of, 100%. If there is not a wire connecting this place that I touch on my finger with this pen that goes to my head, I would never know I touched my finger. I guess I could visually see it, but that's my nervous system too, telling my brain. But I meant, if you can feel this, there is at least one of those hair-like fibers, wires going all the way to my brain from that spot. And by the way, more amazing than that, where this pen's touching, there's probably 50 of those. With all sorts of different types of sensors at the end. All going back up to my brain. So, I'll be hammering this point home in many different ways, but let's first conceptualize this. Here is Mr. or Mrs. Skelly. This is the command center of Mr. or Mrs. Skelly. This is where you think, yeah? Or don't think, yeah? Signals have to get from here down to every part of my body. So this is not dark enough. Hold on. This tape is hard to see on the camera, I can tell. Let's try good old black tape. All right. Quite literally, if I want to feel something in my arm, it has to come out, down my head, out my neck, through my shoulder, down my arm, to wherever this thing needs to go, right? Down to, let's say, this case, I made it go to my thumb. That's the only way I can touch my thumb and get it back up here. It has to. If I want to feel something all the way down in my leg, it's got to go all the way down the spine, out the sacrum, down the back of the leg. All the way down. If I want to feel something in my stomach, it's got to go down my brain, down my spine part way, come wrapping around my ribs, and go in front. I don't care that you memorize these exact things I'm saying. I just want it very, very clear. The reason you have a spinal cord, your spinal cord is a group of all the wires that go to your whole body. That's why it's so thick. Those things that are 1/1000th the width of a piece of paper, there's so many of them that they make a spinal cord that big around. Billions of them. And they come down here and they branch out to every part of your body. And the most efficient way for them to branch out is to come down the brain, down the spinal cord, and then shoot off to where they need to go to, kind of like a tree. If they go to the legs, they tend to go all the way down the spinal cord and then shoot off to the legs. If they go to the arms, they come to the neck and then go down there. If they go to the thoracic region, they come down there. But your spinal cord is not a separate cord with things plugged into it. It's all those wires linked together, and then they branch out and branch out and branch out. And they branch out everywhere. If you just saw your nerves, when you see pictures in a book, they're just showing you the big nerves. If you just saw your nerves in your body, they would cover everything. Everything. They're the way you can feel. I don't only have to have it to the tip of this finger, but I've got to have nerves here and here and here and here. Those are all different nerves telling my brain stuff is going on. Mr. Bigelow.
Oh, I just wanted to say that is just awesome. I'm kind of picturing have you ever seen a fiber optic?
Yes.
Like, it's wrapped with, and the light travels through those plastic cords. Anyway, that's what I'm kind of picturing, the fiber optic going down and then branching out.
That's exactly right. Picture a giant wire with millions and millions of wires on it, and as it goes down, it branches out in groups of wires, and then those branch out, and those branch out, and those branch out. It's also very much like if you've waited too long to repot a plant, and you lift it up, and those roots are all the way around everything, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller, but they cover the whole thing. That's how your nervous system is. everything's coming back up to the plant, to the brain, but all of those roots and everything like that, that's very, very accurate. So thank you for the analogy, sir. Couldn't agree more. Yes, Mr. Bigelow. Oh,
And one other thing, I
please.
just had a question. How you were doing the example with the tape, and you said it, to have sensation or to feel, it has to come from the brain down the spinal cord and then branch out, whatever. Do you know if there's been like a measurement of how fast the brain can like do a thought and then back to the brain?
Yeah, I do. I've read it, and I don't know what the speed is that your nervous system runs.
I was just curious.
It's not as fast as you might think. It's something like your nerves run at like 60 miles an hour, but 60 miles an hour over a 4-foot body is really fast, or a 5-foot body, 6-foot body, right?
Right.
But I thought they'd be faster than that, but that's pretty quick. Because of that, just to add on to something kind of interesting, sir, and interesting for all of you, because your body is so brilliantly made, there are times that signals don't even get to the brain before you make a decision. These are rare, but they're very important. Anybody here touched a hot stove before? Most of us have, right? Or a hot whatever. And you pulled your hand back like really fast and only got a mild burn maybe because of that. Your body actually has a system that if it gets an extremely strong signal coming from your nerves out here, and they get to the spine, and the spine goes, this is a super strong signal, like there's something wrong, the spine sends back a signal that says, pull your arm away, pull your leg away, makes you pull away. And it's your body trying to save the millisecond that it would take for that thing to get up to your brain and your brain to say that. So you still get the pain signal up at your brain, but it arrives like you touch the stove, and you start pulling back your arm, and then you think, ouch. Because your spinal cord was like, that was way too strong a signal. There's something wrong, and it actually starts pulling your arm back. You can override this, but you'd have to literally consciously think about it. Mr. Kachekian, sir.
Would that be considered an involuntary reaction?
Yes, it's a reflex. It's literally a reflex loop, and it is an involuntary action, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's meant to keep you alive, and you recoil from stuff like that, and it's meant to save the extra millisecond that your hand would be in that burning flame, whatever, because by the time it gets up to your brain, you think, ouch, I better pull my arm away. That's way too long. So in those situations, actually, this really strong signal gets to my spine. It keeps going to my head, but my spine sends back a signal that says, pull back. We don't even want to wait the millisecond it's going to take for this guy to figure out what's going on. Yes, Mr. Bigelow.
I'm sorry for
Don't be
asking
sorry.
so many questions.
I love it when people ask questions.
It's just, this is really interesting to me.
Me too.
So like, when you said it goes up, and you said that like in the spine.
Yes.
So technically, I mean, well, the spine doesn't have like a brain, or does it? I mean, how can it receive a signal before the brain?
It has, oh, wow. You're getting touched on some really interesting stuff. So, it kind
It
of,
just maybe remembers like
it kind of does. So, it's got a couple things going for it. So, for one thing, your brain is made up of essentially the same tissue that your nervous wires are made out of. They're made out of all these neurons. Your brain just has a big pack of them. So, in a way, the top of your spinal cord is just more spinal cord that's a brain, kind of. So, anytime you get a group of cells together, they can do a little bit of thinking. And in your spinal cord, you've got reflex loops that are just built in. They're nerves built in to fire back off and send a signal back. And so, I don't know if they do thinking, but they're designed that if they get triggered strong enough, they send out a signal to contract muscles. Yeah. And you don't need a brain to do that. Yeah. But the more neurons you get together, the closer you get to a brain, because a whole bunch of neurons together is kind of how your brain works. Yeah. Yes. In fact, there's lots of very interesting stuff. You have a lot of neurons in your stomach. A lot of people think that's why you get a gut feeling about things. And we definitely have communication between our brain and our stomach. Ms. Smith.
Honestly, I totally.
Yeah? Okay. Well, I bet it'll come back to you probably the minute like I move
Right,
on,
right.
and then you can just raise your hand again. I like that. Okay. So the real point I'm trying to make here is that when they teach you this stuff in the book, they'll talk about, and I'll explain in a second, but they'll talk about like a central nervous system and a peripheral nervous system, and we think that we've got like stuff like hooked onto this thing. No, we don't. We have a bundle of wires coming out the brain, going down the spine, and as it goes down, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller because groups of those wires come off at every single vertebrae, and those wires go out to areas of the body, and they break down to smaller wires, they break down to smaller wires, and they break down until they're down to single wires that go to basically every little square millimeter of your body. Not to mention all the ones that go inside your body to run your heart, your lungs, your liver, your kidneys, send signals to all that stuff too. And these wires can do two things. They can either pick up a signal or they can give a signal. Now, usually they're dedicated, meaning my wires that pick up signals usually only pick up signals, and there are other wires that only give out signals. The ones that pick up signals are picking up sensations. The ones that give out signals are telling me to move. Simplifying again, and I'm going to go into more detail, but yeah, same type of wires, but we've just dedicated one wire to like picking up signals and the other wire to giving out information. Yeah? Okay. So, because we know that everything runs from the brain to the spinal cord and then splits out into what we call nerve plexes, which are groups of these wires, part of the spinal cord coming out here, and those groups break up more and more and more, we have a really good idea of where the nerves come out your spinal cord to feed different areas of your body. This is very helpful to a massage therapist. Remember in your book where it's got a big N there next to the O's and I's? And the N stands for nervation, and I said, don't worry about it, you don't have to memorize nervation. This was a long time ago, but it was true. It did happen. It's going to happen again right now. So the reason you don't have to worry about nervation is because you're not neurosurgeons, and you don't actually have to pinpoint the exact single nerve, which is actually very hard to do even for neurosurgeons. But we do need to know roughly where they're coming from, because sometimes pain in my hand or arm or elbow could be a pinched nerve in my spine. Because if you mess with those wires, your brain thinks it's getting a signal. And it is getting a signal, but it's a false signal. Okay? And I'll explain why that happens in a second. But here's the big deal. Your body wants to use the shortest route to get to all these areas. So what it does is signals that come down the brain and are meant to go to the arms come out the neck and go to the arms. So pinched nerves in your neck can affect the way your arms feel and operate. Miss Smith, I want to call on you before you forget again. Keep going? She's like, you're doing it. Keep going. All right, let me finish this concept. Okay, I got this. All right, so that does not mean, please don't think that every time somebody comes in with arm pain that you're like, pinched nerve in your neck. But it could mean that. And it would be prudent to massage everybody's neck who has arm problems in general. And if I have pinched nerves in my neck, I can have a couple things happen. I can have phantom pains, things that I think hurt my arm, and I have no way of knowing, right? I just get a signal in my brain that my arm is hurting, and there might not actually be a problem in my arm. The other thing is pinched nerves can also make it hard for me to operate my arm. So if my neck is pinched, the nerves that tell my arm to do stuff might be having a problem, and I might actually feel kind of weak or lack control in that area. Same thing. If I want to feel stuff in my thoracic region, stuff comes down my brain and comes out my thoracic region to my chest, my back, my ribs. That kind of makes sense. So if somebody felt pain right here, it could be a pinched nerve in their back. Not their neck, because the nerve came all the way down, then went out the back. If I need to feel stuff or do stuff in the back of my legs, believe it or not, the nerves come all the way down the spine, come out my sacrum. Come out my sacrum and run down the back of the legs. So people with pain or difficulty moving the muscles in the back of their legs and the bottom of their feet, usually, because these go all the way down and under, could have pinched nerves in their sacral area. What about the front of your legs? Well, nerves in the front of your legs actually come down the spine and come out the thoracic region, wrap around the front, and come down. I will show you a picture of this, but here's the beauty of this. The beauty is that when people come to me with arm problems, I always work their neck. I work their arm too. I don't know what it is, right? But I always work the neck. When people come to me with thoracic problems, I make sure to work their thoracic vertebrae because it could be pinched nerves in the back. When people have pain down the back of their legs, I always work the sacral area. When they have pain in the front of their legs, I always work the lumbar area, right? It's just there's no harm in doing it. And it's a good, no-nonsense thing. And it's the reason in the book I said you don't have to worry if the levator scapula is innervated at C3 or whatever. I mean, we don't have to get that precise, but you do need to know the neck kind of goes to the shoulders and arm. You need to know the thoracic vertebrae, those plexes that come off go to the thoracic region, the stomach, things like that. You need to know the lumbar area wraps around and goes down the front of the legs. And you need to know the sacral area goes down the back. That's where the wires come out in big bundles and feed those areas. And it's super duper helpful. From a daily use point of view, from a daily, like what you guys are going to use as massage therapists, this is the most important thing in the entire chapter. So, I mean, this is what I think we're supposed to be doing for you when we lecture you on this book kind of stuff, is to tell you, like, what are you really going to use every day? Well, I'm going to use these things where things might be getting pinched and stuff. Miss Smith, do you still remember? No?
I do.
Oh.
So, I believe in evolution, and when I'm thinking of, like, reflexes,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's just our ancestors learning from thousands and thousands of years ago, hey, don't put your hand in the fire, you know? So it's just like your nerves, like it's like muscle memory, but for your nerves. Like that's how my mind kind of pictures it. Is that like totally off? Or
No, not at all. No, I essentially believe in that too. I don't mention evolution a lot because some people have different ideas about it, and I'm totally okay with that too.
Right.
But from an evolutionary point of view, if you believe in that theory of science, absolutely. What happens is it's a great survival mechanism, and people that had that wiring that would cause them to pull back, it became a survival mechanism, and you're absolutely right. And if you look at the brain itself, the brain is an evolved thing. The center of the brain really is very reptile-like. It controls just breathing, eating, reproduction. And as it developed, there's another layer on top of that handles higher level thinking and things like that. And there's another layer on top of that, really, which is where we have all the kind of complex thoughts we have now and things like that. And you can really see how this thing might have evolved. Yes. From a basic thing. Because you can get around a lot with just reflexes. Look at like cockroaches and stuff. You know, they are just responding to like air and you know, light and all these things, and they do really well. And so you're right, we have some of that built into us. That ability just to stay alive and have stuff be automated. Yeah, absolutely. And lots of stuff in our body is automated. Think of all the stupid things you guys have done in your lives. I don't know about you, me. I think about all the stupid things I've done in my life. And your body, luckily, because it's automated, usually fixes a lot of that stuff for us. It pulls my hand away from the fire. It makes me throw up when I drank too much. It does these things to keep me alive because we're idiots sometimes. Yeah. Very cool. Thank you. So, the most important thing in the entire chapter is the neck plexes feed the arm. The thoracic plexes feed the thoracic region. All that stuff in there. The lumbar area comes around and down and feeds the front of the legs. The sacral area feeds the back of the legs. Yes? Yes? Yes. Cool? Good. Okay. Miss McGruder, madam, I have pain in my arm. It could be a problem in my arm, but I also might have a pinched nerve in what part of my spine?
the back.
What part of the back?
Mm.
I either want to know my neck, my thoracic region, my lumbar region, or my sacral region.
The thoracic region.
Maybe a little higher?
The cervical.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. My neck nerves come out and feed my arm. My neck nerves come out and feed my arm. So, thank you. Mr. Notchin. Sir, hello. I have a pain in my arm, and it could be a problem with my arm, but it also could be a pinched nerve somewhere in my spine. Where in my spine would that pinched nerve possibly be?
Cervical.
Cervical, thank you very much, sir. Good. Mr. Penrod.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Oh, there you are, sorry. You're always on my screen twice, so I have to kind of find you. Mr. Penrod, I have some pain in my tummy. It might be because I ate 2 burritos on the way to school today and drank 2 cups of coffee. But it also could be a pinched nerve where in my spine?
You're a thoracic
Thoracic.
vertebrae.
Yep, thank you. Thoracic region. And by pinched nerve, guys, I mean the nerves that come out the side of the spine. Let me grab this guy. Hold on. I mean these little yellow guys coming out the side. When you work on somebody, this isn't one nerve. This is millions of nerves coming out from a big bundle here that goes all the way down the back. You can kind of see the spine in there, kind of in there in between the vertebrae if I really... That's coming down and breaking out into these smaller bundles. And they don't just stop here. This is just them cutting them off. They go out and feed everything. Yes. Good. And so massaging the back can help loosen up pressure on those. When you go to a chiropractor, their entire practice is based on this. A chiropractor's entire profession is based on what I'm telling you. 100%. In fact, I think too much so. Chiropractors tend to think that they can solve everything if your spine's in alignment. And I get very concerned about any profession. Massage therapists do this too. When I first graduated school, people would be like, I got in a car accident, I can massage that. A gunshot wound, I can massage that. Like, I can fix everything with massage. And that's just not true. There are times that a surgeon is great. There are times that a chiropractor is great, and there's times that a massage therapist is great. Anyway, very true. So this blue section, by the way, cervical is purple. Blue in this case is thoracic. Here's our lumbar, and here's our sacrum. Yeah, I like that. Miss Kilpatrick. Miss Kilpatrick, I have pain in my arm. It might be a pinched nerve where? In my spine. Miss Kilpatrick?
I hear you. I'm just thinking.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you fell asleep, and so I'm like, I gotta yell at her.
No.
It's either up in my neck. Remember, it's got to come from my head and go to my arm. So you want to think about what's the quickest route to get there. It could be in my neck, my thoracic region, my lumbar region, my sacral region. Where do the nerves go that feed my arm? Where do they go to my spine and get to my head?
Your neck?
Yes. My cervical region, yes. Now, I've got pain in my chest. That could be a heart attack, but it also could just be a pinched nerve in what region? Not my cervical. And I'm pointing to it right now.
I'm going to say spine.
Well, it is. All of it's the spine, by the way. Everybody, your cervical, your thoracic, your lumbar, your sacrum, is all your spine. But
Your thoracic?
yes, your thoracic region. Thank you, ma'am. Miss Stewart.
I have a question. So, like, you're saying with, like, a pinched nerve or, like, having pain in your chest, because sometimes I will just have, like, random, like, shooting pain in, like, my chest or, like, my arm or my hand or, like, my side of my hand, like, just, like, random spots. Is that, like, a pinched nerve? Or I've also heard people be like, that's trauma stored in the body. But technically it is.
I mean, I guess
I don't
technically
know.
it is. I don't quite know. By the way, I do believe trauma gets stored in the body, so I'm with you on that. I'm not sure if that is or not. The reason I was laughing was I wasn't laughing at your pain, but I was once hanging out with somebody, and they were like, "Oh!" And I'm like, they go, "Don't you just hate random pain?" And I was like, I'd never thought about it. We all have this experience, but I never had anybody just point out the fact that it's random, complete, nonsensical pain. Anyway, it could be coming from...
And it's like a shooting pain in like one area, like one localized area.
So these are very, very, very tiny wires, and it's not hard just to catch them just right and send a zipping pain down somewhere. And when I explain how these wires work, we'll see that even more. That could be it too. They also, the wires have what's called action potential. They've got energy in them already. And if it gets set off by a small chemical imbalance, they'll send a signal all on their own. And that would give you a pain signal. Because, by the way, everyone, pain is in your head. None of you actually really experience pain. Now, I know that doesn't help when you're in pain. Like, trust me, I don't mean like... But I meant it's a learned thing. All you guys experience is electrical signal up in your brain, and your brain says that is pain. And it does that to keep you alive. It says that's a serious signal, I want to get your attention. And we all tend to be hard to keep our attention, just like it's hard during lecture to keep all your attention. And so your brain is like, wake the hell up. This is serious. And it's found the best way to do that is to tell you you're in pain. But you don't actually feel pain. You don't. You interpret pain.
Well, yeah, because technically, like, people who can't feel anything, or, like, that are paralyzed, like, it's no different between them getting cut by something or us getting cut by something. It's just that, like, they don't have the signal to their brain. They're being told that something's happening.
Yes, that's exactly right. Which is why when you talk to somebody who's paralyzed, they'll often tell you where their paralysis occurred. I don't mean where on the planet it occurred, where on their spine it occurred. So if somebody says, I have a paralysis between L5 and S1, it means everything below L5 doesn't work. It's been cut off from the spine. So what, Ms. Stewart, if somebody had, and this is just roughly true, but if somebody had a spinal injury between L5 and S1, what part of their body could they no longer control and feel?
Their legs.
Their legs, and more specifically, what side of their legs?
What side? Oh, like the back side of them?
Yes, because it's the sacrum that feeds the back. They would still, because the lumbar, this is a very unusual injury, but for this class example, but the lumbar region still works, and they would actually still be able to feel and control the muscles in the front of their leg. So, if somebody is paralyzed from, let's say, paralyzed, the spine got completely severed below T12, then all the legs, right? And as you move on up, it becomes really, really hard. When you guys see people playing basketball in wheelchairs, and they're amazing, have you guys ever seen this? They're amazing. They're in wheelchairs. Those are what we call low spinal injuries. The injuries happen way down the thing, and they've lost control of their legs, but they still have control of their torso even. They're able to, like, whoom. When you get it really high up, those are people that you've seen in a wheelchair that literally have to use their arms to stay in the chair because they've got the neck working, so they still have their arms, but they've lost everything from down here. Everything. Yes. Cool. All right. So, to review, Miss Cuppage. You're going down fast. Miss Cuppage. The nerves that feed my arms, the nerves that tell my arms what to do, and the nerves that pick up signals from my arms, enter my spinal cord at what region of my spinal cord? Just try to put the same question many different ways.
Cervical region.
My cervical region, yeah. Somewhere between C1 and C7, yeah. The nerves that allow me to feel my tummy and my back and my chest and all that kind of stuff and tell it to do stuff and control probably a lot of my organs in there and things like that come from what region of my spine?
The thoracic region.
Yes. The nerves that allow me to control the front of my legs and feel the front of my legs, all the way down to my toes, all the way down to my top of my feet and my toes, come from what region of my body?
Your lumbar region.
Your lumbar region, that's right. And the nerves that allow me to feel the back of my legs and the bottom of my feet.
The
Come.
sacral region.
Sacral. Thank you. What Miss Cuppage just did was my entire point of the most important thing to know from this thing. By the way, because of this phenomenon, because your body works this way, and those of you who have really bad back pain might be able to relate to this. When your low back is hurting, most people hurt their low back in the lumbar region. People that hurt their low back in the lumbar region will complain that they almost feel like they're going to go to the bathroom or something, because those nerves wrap around in front and feed this area. And when it really hurts them, they're all pinched. And they're like, it messes with all that stuff in front. So don't worry, they've got pain back there too, but they've got it everywhere. Yeah. So, that's the most important thing, but we have all sorts of other exciting things to talk about, and we have to take a break. Yes. So, I just made a super duper big deal about the wiring in your nervous system and the fact that it can get pinched in areas and send a pain signal to your brain that your brain thinks is coming from a different area. I think it's important we understand why that happens. So, I did call these wires because it was the best description and because they really do carry electricity. They carry microvolts, millivolts actually, which are like a millionth of a volt, but still they carry voltage. They really do. Yes, Mr. Bigelow.
Have you ever heard of microcurrent?
No.
What?
Like
biocurrent?
I mean, I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
Oh, it was just, well, I do it at the studio. It's where it uses electricity that bounces off of two little prongs, and you put it at the part of the body where it's hurting, and it like tricks your brain into thinking that it kind of disrupts those
Nerve
connections.
impulses. Yeah.
Exactly. It's pretty cool. But I use that at the studio for people that have pain.
Cool.
It's part of the body contouring type of certification that I have.
Cool.
But it's just interesting that, that electricity, kind of disrupts those signals.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not surprised about that. Because you really do have these wires, everybody, that go from your head out to all these spots in your body. Every last little spot that you need to control or feel. But these are very interesting wires. I said that they carry electricity. Well, where does the electricity come from? It doesn't come from your brain. It's not like there's a big battery up here. They come from the wires themselves. The wires, your book's going to talk about this too, but I want you to really understand it. The wires are filled with what they call action potential. And they're very much like, this is a little AAA battery. I want to get a small one. So, but now imagine it 1,000th the width of a piece of paper. But they are little batteries. This battery has action potential, right? It's got energy in it. It has the potential to do something if we hook it up to something else. And your neurons, which are your nerve cells, neurons just nerve cells, there's a whole bunch of them together to make these wires, and they're like a whole bunch of these little batteries hooked together. And when an event sets them off, they release their electricity and shoot it down the line. Now, why is that significant? There's a lot of things that can set an event off. I can touch the tip of my finger, and that can set off the batteries to run a signal back up to my brain, and my brain gets a little signal. And my brain says, oh, that's the wire that goes to the tip of his finger. He must be feeling something. Literally what it does. But because these batteries have action potential, that same wire can get hit here. And if it gets hit here, it sets off the battery in that wire here, and it sends a signal up to my brain. And my brain says, oh, that's the wire that goes to his finger. He must be in pain. I feel the pain here. That's what my brain tells me. But it was actually a pinched nerve here, or a pinched nerve here, or a pinched nerve here, here, and here. So because the wire has its own electricity potential in it, it can get set off along the way. And your brain's smart, but it's just a command center. And it just sees the light up, right, on that wire that normally goes to your finger and it goes, must be a problem with the finger. It tells you there's a problem with the finger. You come and tell your massage therapist there's a problem with your finger. But there was really a pinching of the nerve, and then maybe there is a problem with the finger. Please don't forget, maybe there's a problem with the finger. Your nervous system works really well. But you could have a pinched nerve anywhere along that wire that's setting off that signal. And that's why pinched nerves work the way they do. Because if you set the wire off on the way to the brain gets a signal the same as if you set it off from the end of that wire. And it assumes that it's getting a signal from the end of that wire. It doesn't know the difference. You don't know the difference. And here is the signal your brain gets when a wire gets set off. Beep. Here is the signal that your brain gets if a pain sensor, but wait, let me back up here a second. At the end of these wires are sensors. And there's only one sensor per wire. And those sensors feel all sorts of stuff. And remember, there's like, in the tip of that little, where my pen was touching my finger, there's like 50 sensors right there. In that one little area. 50 little wires going there, 50 little sensors. And the sensors feel things like, one sensor just senses pressure. Another one senses cellular damage. It's really a pain thing. Another one senses vibration. Another one senses hot and cold. Another one senses acceleration, how fast that pen comes in. And what happens is all of those signals go back up to my brain, and my brain then interprets like, oh, we're being gently poked with something that's a little pointy but roughly blunt. Like it really has to do that. But when the pain sensor wire goes off, the brain receives a beep. When the pressure sensor wire goes off, the brain receives a beep. When the heat sensor wire goes off, the brain receives a beep. And your brain literally puts that together and says, we got a pressure sensor wire from this tiny little area in his finger going off. We got the velocity wire did not go off, like it's not happening quickly. The nociceptor, which is your pain receptor wire, did not go off. The vibration did not go off, and we're not getting a heat sensor wire either, but I'm getting about 50 of these little pressure sensor things. We must be getting touched lightly, because I got 50 little different wires going beep. Now, if it was 50 pain receptor wires going off, still get beep, but it get beep from 50 wires that it knows it receives pain from the tip of this thing, and it would be like, this idiot is poking himself with a needle again. The point I'm trying to make is that you really don't feel things the way you think you do. You literally just get a series of beep, 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 except there's millions of them. Beep, 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 beep. And your brain actually has to make sense of that. And so when you pinch a nerve along the way, and it's a nerve that carries pain signals, and it's pinched here, the one that goes to my thumb, my brain just hears beep on the thumb wire, and it goes, we got a problem with the thumb. We're getting a signal from the thumb wire. It's a pain signal. It's coming from a pain receptor wire that's hooked to a pain receptor. It feels exactly the same to your brain as if I smash my thumb with a hammer. It's getting that same kind of sensation there, and it goes, there's a problem with the brain, and with the thumb. Because these wires just carry an all or nothing signal. Remember how muscles worked on an all or nothing thing? I said your muscle fibers either fire or they don't. I hope you remember this. Thank you. Thank you. Your muscles either fire or they don't. Like, not the whole muscle, but every single fiber either fires completely or it doesn't. Either tries as hard as it can or it doesn't. Your nerves work the same way. They're either on or off. That's it. Your brain doesn't go, oh, it's a faint signal. No. Now, does seem faint in the sense that it might just be one nerve going off and your brain's like, eh. Whereas if you have 750 pain receptors going off, your brain goes, this seems pretty darn important right now. But the individual wires send a single signal, which is beep, pressure, beep, whatever, heat, beep. And your brain puts that together in a big mosaic and figures out what's going on with your body. Truly amazing. Then it makes a decision up here and says, I think we should pull that thumb back. I'm going to send a signal out, and sometimes I'm making that decision. I'm like, that really hurts. I think I'm going to pull my thumb away. I send a signal back, many of them, by the way, to decide how many nerves I want to fire, how many muscles I want to fire here to pull my thumb back. Might take hundreds of nerves just to do this. Pull my thumb back. Because I'm telling individual fibers to fire. Truly amazing. Going on all the time. Yeah? So your muscles work on an all or nothing principle where the individual fibers that make up the muscle either fire all the way or they don't, and your nerves work on an all or nothing principle. They either send a signal or they don't. They have an action potential, they've got energy inside them, and when it gets set off, they send that energy down the line. And they really do set off the next one, the next one, the next one, the next one. And then at the end, by the way, they call your nerves electrochemical because at the end they release a chemical, but it's because of electricity, but they release a chemical at the end that tells that muscle to do something or tells your brain something. You communicate in your body with chemicals, but it literally is an electrical signal that runs down that nerve. Yes, Mr. Bigelow.
You were just talking about the all or nothing, thing with the muscles.
Yeah.
Like, what if, like, you see something and you're gonna pick it up, but it's a box, right? It's a cardboard box, and it's a big one, so you in your brain you think it's heavy. However, let's say it's empty. What is that like? I guess that's just trickery to the brain.
Yeah.
In reference to the all or nothing, kicking off to trigger how many, the muscle fibers that need to contract.
Yeah. When we go to pick something up, we make a guesstimation in our head of how heavy it is. Right?
Yeah.
Unless we're really
Right.
slow and careful. We can go there really slow and careful and be like, I'm just going to slowly increase. But most of us don't have time to do that. We reach out, we grab it. We think it weighs X amount. We've been lifting stuff our whole lives. All of us have been picking stuff our whole lives. We got a pretty good clue what it is. And we go for it. And sometimes it's really light. You pull it in your face even. You can't stop the signals in time. You use way too many muscle fibers and boom. You've thrown the thing or whatever. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. But that's just you underestimating or overestimating the weight of the item and sending out signals too quickly to do it. Yeah. I would like to point out to all of us, though, this is really important for your massage practice, and I think it's very important for your life personally, too. Study after study after study says that we make those type of judgment mistakes all the time. And here's what I mean by that. I don't just mean lifting a box, sir. I meant judging a situation or seeing what's going on in the world. They believe in any second of your life there's about 1 million bits of information to pick up, and that you are lucky if you can pick up 10,000 bits of information. So all the time in front of you, a world is going on that you are lucky if you are grabbing 1% of what's going on around you. And you're grabbing different bits of information around you than everybody else is. And then what do? It's a survival instinct. We fill in the holes. So this is kind of a silly example, but it's really true. You all know the other half of my face is behind this notebook right now. You're not dumb. But you don't see it or anything like that. Your brain just says that's what's happening. But in reality, there's a two-dimensional picture in front of you where I just disappear and I'm back again. Now, that's the picture. You have learned through experience that usually when that happens, somebody is going behind something. They are going behind something, and that's why the picture disappears. But you have to make that assumption. And you tell yourself, I'm passing behind the notebook. It really, to your eyes, is just my face disappears and it reappears. I know that sounds a little weird what I'm saying, because you're like, no, you're behind the notebook. Yes, I am. You figured that part out, though. Your brain has to make those kind of guesses all the time, and it has to make those guesses about social situations all the time. And it usually makes it based on your past experience and your assumptions, and they're usually wrong. And don't mean just you, I mean me. We're more wrong more often than we're not. So it doesn't mean don't trust yourself. Trust yourself. You got to operate off something. But if you go into a room and ask a whole bunch of people what happened, they'll always tell you something different. Let me give you an example. My wife was, long before she met me, was in a restaurant where 3 guys came in and held it up at gunpoint. And the police talked to witnesses at the end of it. She was a witness, and asked them, what did you see and what happened? And my wife said, you're asking us to see if our stories match, right? Here's what the police officer said. He said, absolutely not. He said, if your stories match, yeah, thank you for the facial expressions. If your stories match, it's probably an inside job and you're in on it. He said, because stories never match at these things. You all were in panic. You were standing in different areas of the room, and you all saw something different. And she said it was amazing when she heard all the different stories from people. Some people thought it was one gunman. There were three, at least as far as she was concerned. Some people thought they had guns. Some people thought they had knives. Some people thought this. And this was the police officer's point. He said in real life accounts, people's stories never match up. Never match up. Because there's too much information coming in too fast, and they have to make sense of it really quick. They all got the big picture right. They were being robbed. Everybody agreed on that. But they couldn't decide how many people were robbing them, what they had in their hands, what was going on, what they looked like, all sorts of stuff. So I try to remind myself of that too, like, because I've had clients come in and I'm like, oh, this person's mad. And I find out they're not mad. There's something else going on. They just look the way I look when I'm mad, but that's not how they look when they're mad. They're stressed or whatever. And so that's my point, is we try to fill in all these holes, and we have to. You have to. You've got to make assumptions. You can't get through your day without making assumptions. But just remember, sometimes they're wrong. Because our nervous system's just, because your brain's just getting like, and I'm like, okay, you know, it's this thing, and it's not always this thing. It's very helpful to know. You are doing the best you can to interpret a very complicated reality around you. And we get better and better at it, but. Okay, so your brain works on an all or nothing principle. Your nerves work on an all or nothing principle. They send signals to your muscles that work on an all or nothing principle. We know that the nerves that come out the side of your neck feed your arm. The nerves that come out your thoracic region feed your thoracic region. The nerves that come out your lumbar region wrap around and go down the front of your legs. The nerves that go down your sacral region go down the back. I'm going to show you a picture in a second of all this loveliness. And then we know that your nerves actually have action potential, which means they're full of electricity like this little battery. And when they get set off, they send a signal down the wire. Now your book's going to get really fancy about how this battery got a charge to it. And it's very confusing, I suspect, in the book. But very simply put, you've got charged atoms in your body. Usually it's sodium and potassium. Sorry, I had to think there for a second. Sodium, potassium ions in your body. Ions have a tiny charge to them. And what your body does with what's called a sodium-potassium pump, this is not that important, by the way, it allows different amounts of sodium on one side and potassium on the other side of the cell, and it creates a negative charge in it. And then when it lets those flip, all of a sudden it gets a positive charge and sends electricity down the line. So you've got charged particles in your body right now. And what it does is it gets those separated out. So you've got a really strong negative on one side and a really strong positive on the other side. And when they mix back together, it creates electricity and they shoot down the line. And it's called the sodium-potassium pump. And it's your body's way of using sodium, table salt, and potassium that you eat that you got in a banana. That it allows that sodium-potassium pump to create an electrical difference. And what happens is, in nature, anytime you have a difference of two things, when you open back up the gates, they try to come back together and equalize. When you guys put salt in a glass of water and stir it up, the glass of water is salty all the way through. Nature always tries to equalize. So when you keep stuff apart that's not equal, when it comes back together, it creates a charge. And because these things are charged, and your body does that on purpose, and it shoots a signal down the nerve. And there's even actually a period of time that your nerve has to rebuild that charge. So it doesn't take long, but it can take a second before it can actually receive that stimulus again. You've got loads of other nerves, so it's not usually a problem, but it does have to recharge for a second. So that's kind of the concept of how your nervous system works in general. And again, I will show you pretty slides from the book to kind of make this more apparent, but I wanted you to have a big 10,000 foot view of how it works. Yeah? I thought you were going to ask something, Mr. McClure, because you usually come forward when you unmute yourself. That's why I paused. No? No. Okay. So before I show you slides, let me explain one last thing that I think is very confusing in the book. Remember, they're all wires. They're all charged wires. They like to divide your nervous system up into two parts. The central nervous system, which is your spine and head and spine, and your peripheral nervous system, which is all the stuff coming out in your periphery. I don't like this division because it's all the same thing, right? The wires from your central nervous system go out and become the wires in your peripheral nervous system. So I think it's confusing. But the stuff in the center of your body, in your axial skeletal system, your brain and your spine, is called your central nervous system. And it is the thing that's responsible kind of for all the thinking, right? And getting everything back up to the head and all the thinking. And even the reflexes have to go to the spine and get whipped back out. And everything that comes off that is called your peripheral nervous system. It's all just these wires coming off. And so your book's going to talk about the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. To me, it's just where those wires go. So as a wire comes out of my brain and goes down my spine, it's in the central nervous system. When it branches off, it becomes part of the peripheral nervous system. Yeah. But they got to make it more confusing than that. So, your peripheral nervous system, these wires that come off, they do one of two things. They're the same wires, okay? But some have one job and another have another job. And they label these two different types of jobs as afferent and efferent. And if I could find the person that labeled them that way, I would pinch their nerves. Because it's a horrible, horrible naming system. But afferent nerves, and I'll give you a way to remember this here in a second. Afferent nerves are the wires that you use for sensation. So they take sensation after you've experienced it. It goes in the afferent wire to your brain. Efferent peripheral nerves take the action that's going to be effort for you to do something and sends it out usually to a muscle to tell it to do something. Those are called motor neurons. They're the same darn wires. Just some have a job to pick up information. Those are called afferent or sensory neurons. Those are wires that are in your peripheral system. The whole stuff I just told you about, same wires, but they're meant to go to the brain. They're called afferent or sensory nerves because they sense stuff and they send a signal after you've received it. And then you've got efferent nerves where your brain says, hey, we now want to do something based on that signal or based on whatever. I just want a pizza, whatever. And it sends out a thing, and that's called a motor neuron or an efferent neuron. And that's when I'm going to produce some effort. This is how I remember them. Cool? You'll probably never hear these terms again after tomorrow. But it's good to know if somebody brings them up. Again, same wires. One is receiving, one is giving out. So, but of course the book wants to divide this even further, and I'm going to show you a slide of this too, but I just kind of like to kind of give it to you twice. Of those efferent nerves, those motor nerves, those nerves that are sending a message from my brain to do something, the nerves I'm using right now to talk to you and move my hands, they're sending those signals. They have two categories. Same wires, but some are dedicated to, what are the two terms I want to think of? Some are dedicated to somatic operations, and some are dedicated to autonomic operations. The autonomic operations are automatic operations. I have a nerve telling my, not really telling my heart to beat actually, because my heart can beat all on its own. But anyway, I have nerves telling internal organs to do things right now. Those are autonomic operations. I don't think about them. I don't think about telling my kidneys to function, but there really are nerves going to my kidneys telling them to do certain things at certain times. Pull in less salt, pull in less water, all that. So those are peripheral nerves that are efferent nerves, that are motor neurons, but they're automatic. They just occur on their own. Your brain's taking care of them, by the way. They're not automatic as far as your brain's concerned, but you don't ever think about them. You don't have to think to breathe. I realize breathing's a tricky one because you can control it, but it is an autonomic thing. It will take care of itself without you thinking about it. In fact, if you pass out, you start trying to breathe again. Like, it's automatic. Then you've got what are called somatic things that are under this efferent terminology. And that's the stuff you're used to. Somatic is under your bodily control. So this was a somatic movement. I chose to do it. When you guys massage a human body, hopefully you're using your somatic nerves and you're telling yourself, I want to move my hands this way and I want to do this thing. I promise to show you a slide of this because you're going to need to see it afterwards because there's one more division. Of those automatic functions, this is heading somewhere kind of important. Of those automatic functions, there are two modes your body goes into. And that is either sympathetic or parasympathetic mode. And this is important. Sympathetic mode is actually your fight or flight mode. When you are sympathetic with something, you are actually adding to it. And so when I'm in my sympathetic mode, I get some signals coming in and I go, yep, that's a big deal. That's a lion. I am going to run. That's a big deal. And that is my fight or flight mode. And my nervous system goes on high. My endocrine system kicks on high too. They're all connected. But the fact is, I go into that mode. And some very interesting things happen in my nervous system when I go into the sympathetic mode. My body is smart. My brain is smart. And it says, you just ate those burritos, right? But you're being chased by a tiger. I don't think we need to send blood to your stomach to digest right now. We probably could use that blood better off used in your legs. And it literally sends signals to shut down my stomach and put more effort into my legs. Very smart. It will send signals like stop sending information to the defense mechanisms in the body. And I don't mean defense like running defense. I meant like fighting off bacteria and viruses. Because my body's like, that's not really important. It doesn't matter if he catches a cold right now, if this tiger catches us. It's all hands on deck. When I am in the sympathetic nervous system, my body says we're not going to worry about fighting cancer because I don't want to freak you out, but you all have cancer in your body right now. It's that your immune system keeps it at bay all the time. But my body says, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not going to worry about the immune system. I'm not going to worry about the digestive system. I'm not going to worry about the non-important systems. I'm going to worry about legs pumping, arms pumping, and lots of eyesight stuff going on. So I'm very alert and ready to do whatever I need to do. And I'm going to shut down everything else because I don't want to think about everything else. So we also tend to get very tunnel visioned when we're in this area. So when people are freaked out, they tend to get very tunnel visioned. This is great if you're being attacked. This is great. This is a very good thing. This is Mother Nature keeping you alive. It is a wonderful thing. If you don't live in this state. And from an evolutionary point of view, or whatever, just a historical point of view, a few thousand years ago, you used to walk around and you're like, huh, looking for food. Da, 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 da. There's some grass over there. Oh, there's a tree. Looking for food. Found some food. Da, da, da. Oh, there's a tiger way over there. I'm scared. Do, 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 do. Run, run, run. Somatic nervous system. Boom, boom, boom. Tiger's gone back. Looking for food. Da, 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 da. Perfect. It's exactly how it's supposed to work. Then we got these. This is not an old man rant about cell phones. But the problem is I can open this thing up and I can watch videos of disasters all over the world, in my hometown, everywhere. And I'm not saying you shouldn't watch the news. I don't really have an opinion on that. But my brain doesn't know the difference between this and a tiger. My brain only gets D. You think you know the difference, but have you guys watched a video and had your heart rate go up? Have you ever been laying in bed? I've laid in bed before trying to go to sleep, and then I think of something where I'm like, I'm all wide awake now. My brain doesn't know the difference between imagined events and real events. And so if I'm constantly bombarding myself with stresses, and by the way, there's other stresses too, like, Tapscott gave me a big homework assignment, and if I don't finish it, then I'm going to fail school, then I won't become a massage therapist, and my dreams won't come true, and, like, it's really stressful. right? You got to kind of talk yourself down off that ledge sometimes because you're in that somatic state all the time. And our bodies don't do well in that somatic state all the time because we're not digesting, we're not resting. That's the parasympathetic state. In the parasympathetic state, your body actually turns up the volume on fighting cancer, digests food, rebuilds muscle, rebuilds bone, fights off infection, does all that beautiful stuff that happens in the parasympathetic state. One of the things that you guys do as massage therapists is to put somebody in the parasympathetic state, if you're doing it right. We are creating a safe environment. It's our number one thing we have to do, is create a safe environment for our clients where they don't have to worry about anything. They don't worry about controlling the boundaries and all that kind of stuff because we are taking care of them. That's our job. So they can actually relax and go into the parasympathetic state. And I am utterly convinced, you will never convince me otherwise, I'm utterly convinced that I have saved people's lives from cancer and all sorts of disease and never known it just because I helped them to relax and get them in the parasympathetic state. Utterly convinced. And I think you'll be convinced over time too, because you'll have clients come into you and they'll have some weird problem, you can't figure it out, and you massage them and they're like, it's better though. You didn't do that. I mean, you kind of did that. You put them in the parasympathetic state and their body started working again. Right? So massage does have this mechanical component, and I'm going to talk to you lots and lots and lots about it. Like, we're analyzing the architecture of the body, and we're going to loosen up the hamstrings to stop this pelvic tilt going a certain way, which will affect the lower back, and it'll make their neck better eventually, and that's all valid. But really, one of our first missions, in my opinion, is to create a healing environment so their body can heal itself. It's my same goal with this class, right, is to create a learning environment. Right? I'm not really teaching you right now, unless you're choosing to learn with me and we are in this learning environment. It's about creating an environment. It's about creating fertile soil. If you grow plants, you didn't grow them. You created a fertile environment for which they can flourish in. You control the soil and the water, but you didn't grow a plant. I haven't ever healed a person in my life. But I have created healing environments for them to heal in. I've never educated a person in my life, but I have created educational environments for them to learn in. And I've never grown a plant in my life. I've created fertile soil for them to grow in. So our number one goal before you ever start analyzing even the crazy stuff I told you today, which I think is super important about, oh, this nerve is pinched here and whatever, is create a healing environment for your client so they are in the parasympathetic state. We are trying to get them in the parasympathetic state. Most of us, probably all of us, live way too much in the sympathetic state, which is actually fight or flight. We have way too many stresses coming at us all the time, and it's very, very hard on our bodies. Mr. Bigelow, please.
I was just curious, going along the lines of how it's very interesting how you were talking about making a parasitic, parasympathetic state. Have you used like brainwave like music, like, because there's like 5 brainwaves, like there's alpha, beta, delta, gamma, and theta, I think.
Yeah.
Have you used that in your spa to create that environment?
No, but I think it'd be a really good thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was actually, when I was studying this last night, I thought, wouldn't it be great, because Spotify has, you know, all those sorts of,
Yep.
What are they called? Those buy something beats?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Bio
about?
beats or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that, you know, sync up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Katepian.
Nice.
Yeah,
Thank you,
the
sir.
beats, you know, that, because I just thought I'm going to use this in my spa to where I'm going to put that, like, I think, sorry, I was just reading the chat, but, what am I trying to say? The alpha,
Yeah.
I think, is one of the best ones where you're, like,
I agree.
still conscious, but you're very relaxed, you're calm.
I think it's a great idea. I really
Yeah.
do. Just remember,
Anyway.
by the way, I really mean it. I think it's a great idea. Just remember the number one thing that influences them is you.
Right.
Yeah. But yes, I
But
think
that sure would help.
oh my gosh, your place should smell nice. It should have the right sound. All these things add to this goal that you are setting, which is to get them into the parasympathetic state, create this sense of safety and well-being so their body goes back and says, I am now safe, I will go into repair mode. That's what we're trying to do. I am now safe, I will go into repair mode. Yeah. I think that makes all the difference in the world. But yeah, I love it. Anything you can layer on top of that to help with that? Absolutely. Yeah. So our goal is to get people in the parasympathetic state. That was that long discussion of all these things that I'll show you on a slide here in a second. Any other comments?
I was just gonna say really quick. I
No,
just brought
please.
that up because brain waves, was in this section, and I just thought it was fascinating.
It is fascinating. The whole thing is fascinating. Yeah.
Right.
No, I'm with you completely. And I think it's kind of nice too because the cool thing is if you create this environment for your clients, guess who else gets to enjoy this environment? You. You're in there kind of meditatively doing your massage. You can be working and be in the parasympathetic state. That's not hard at all. You're relaxed. You're listening to the same music. All that stuff. So yes, I agree. Mr. Kachekian, sir.
When you have some kind of like soothing, calming music playing while the massage is going on, doesn't that actually help, like with the muscle, will help like relax the person in a way that you can get a better reaction from your massage,
Yeah, I would think so. Very much so. All that environmental stuff helps. Yes.
or better result from your massage?
Yes, I agree. Better results from massage. And basically, when people feel better, they are better. And that might sound like I'm just tricking them. I don't mean that. I meant, most of us, what's bothering us is how we feel about something. And if we feel better, we are better in some ways. So, yeah, we're trying to make them feel better. And if soothing music helps with that, yes. And then their muscles tend to relax. Muscles, by the way, get tense when you're in the sympathetic state. They tense up and get ready for action. So they're
Yeah,
never.
I'm glad-
They're never.
I was just gonna say I'm glad that Mr. McClure just put a song in the chat by Marconi Union's Weightlessness.
Yeah.
And yeah, that I listen to that all the time because its research has shown that certain beats, in that song, it's like the best song to relax and get your brain working.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating.
Awesome. So I'm glad you guys are thinking this way because clients will actually pick you based on how you make them feel. And usually it's how you make them emotionally feel more than actually how you make them physically feel. Like you need to be a good therapist, they still want a good massage, but I really think that's true. They really do. Yeah. All right, let's take a 10-minute break, come back at 10 o'clock, and then show you some pictures of the stuff I'm talking about so you can visually put it in your head and organize all this, all right? See you at 10 o'clock. Have that. I have everybody here is on time. It's just we're trying to get us in that habit of using this new system and testing it and stuff like that. I appreciate your patience with us, with what we're trying to do here too. So yeah,
Okay.
but I got you. Yeah. If we ever mark you if we mark you late or whatever online, we send you an email because you're not signing off on it. You wouldn't even know, right? So you'll get an email where I'll say, hey, and I'm not trying to be a snot. I'm just like, hey, marked you absent 15 minutes today. Da, 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 da. So that you're like, yeah, so it's not a surprise later or something. If you don't get an email from us, you weren't marked absent. Yeah, and you probably shouldn't say anything because we missed it. So, don't be too honest. All right. Okay, everybody. Let's look at some slides because I think they will help clarify this. They'll illuminate everything. They'll tie it all together. And knowledge will fall down on you like manna from heaven. It's coming. I hope. Okay. I think we need more bandwidth at this college. Anyway. Okay, nervous system. Yeah. Yay. Okay. Don't worry about that. So, I didn't say this at all, but obviously your body is always trying to reach a state of homeostasis. This is where everything is in Everything is kept the same. And this is actually a challenge for your body. A challenge that it does really well because the outside world does not help you stay in homeostasis. And let me just give you a simple little example. But I got out of my air-conditioned car today. My car was like 72 degrees. It was so nice. And I walked outside and it was 82 degrees. And then I walked back inside and it was 78 degrees. And I walked in this lab and it's like about 37 degrees in this lab. So my body, though, internally stayed the same. It stayed 98.6 during that whole time. Had my body really leapt down to 80 degrees or over to 72 or down to 38, I would die. Your internal core temperature, your arms and legs can get darn cold and darn hot and be fine. You can stick your arm in ice water for probably 30 minutes and have it go completely numb and you're going to be fine. You're going to pull it back out, it will warm back up again, whatever. But if your core temperature drops more than about 5 degrees or raises more than about 5 degrees, you are in danger of dying. And your whole life, you've been living in places like Arizona or who knows, North Dakota. And somehow your body has been keeping that core temperature the same. It's been keeping homeostasis within you to keep you alive. So your body's always trying to actually maintain homeostasis. We do some other crazy things to our poor body. Sodium's really important in your body. We just talked about sodium-potassium pump. But you don't need a lot of sodium. You only need a little bit. What do we do all day long? We dump all this sodium in our body. Our body has to get rid of it. It can't be floating around in too much sodium. It can't be floating around in too much potassium. It can't be floating around in too much cholesterol. It can't be floating around in too much alcohol. It can't be... And your body is constantly trying to get rid of this stuff or get more stuff in to stay in homeostasis. So it is maintaining an internal environment in your core to keep you alive. And it's a very, very fine line there. And it does a great job. And it does that automatically, basically, with the autonomic part of your nervous system and your endocrine system. We're going to find out helps with that a lot. But anyway, your body is trying to maintain homeostasis. And it's doing it when an outside world is constantly changing. And we just take it for granted. But it's amazing what it does, and you don't even have to think about it. I mean, it really is amazing that you guys can walk around and survive in 110 degree weather, and then survive in 40 degree weather. And it's amazing some of the stuff we put in our bodies that we can survive. You know? Cool. All right. So that's homeostasis. The anatomy of your nervous system, meaning what makes it up, is the brain and spinal cord. Remember, that was the central nervous system. And then there's peripheral nerves, all the nerves coming out. And then there's the sense things at the end. We talked about little sensors at the end that sense pressure and stuff like that. We also have some very big sensors. Big sensors like our eyeballs, and our ears, and our nose, and our tongue, which is loaded with sensors. And our skin, which has all sorts of sensation stuff in it. So that's basically the anatomy. That's what makes up our nervous system. When they say neurotransmitters, by the way, they mean chemical transmitters that actually help transmit some of that signal down the line. Don't worry about it in and of itself. Let's not do that. Let's try to... Okay. So, I said your central nervous system, which is in the center of your body, makes sense, is your brain and spinal cord. Boom. That's it. The brain and spinal cord then split off into all these nerves coming out the sides. All these nerves coming out the sides, and they're off on their way to go connect to a part of your body. Every single square millimeter of your body has hundreds and hundreds of nerves connected to it, so you can feel things and tell things from that area and tell things to do things. And that is your peripheral nervous system. And then we said your peripheral nervous system has two subcategories. It's split. Your peripheral nervous system has some wires that are handling things that are underneath your control, your voluntary control, and that's your somatic nervous system. Those are mainly wires going to my biceps and my triceps and my quads and my lips and my buccinators and all these muscles and things that are under my control, and my eye muscles so I can look around and do crazy stuff with them. That's still my peripheral nervous system. It's the same darn wires, but these are wires dedicated to things underneath my control. And so they're called somatic, peripheral nerves. And then I've got all these autonomic nerve wires. These regulate things that I am not in control of in general. By the way, yes, you can meditate, and there are examples of people being able to control these things, but in general, very much like your breathing, which you can control, in general, these things are automated. And you don't have to think about them. But your brain is still sending signals doing them, by the way. Your brain is taking care of so much right now. And have you thanked it lately? Have you just given a little pat on the head and said thank you? Thank you for dealing with 99.999% of the stuff I have to do so that I can watch this television program. Because that's what it's doing. It's doing all the heavy lifting so you can go bounce around and have a good time. Hopefully. The autonomic nervous system, this automatic, right? Automatic, happens automatically, is divided into two more systems, which sometimes it's in a sympathetic mode, and sometimes it's in a parasympathetic mode. And the sympathetic mode, even though it sounds sympathetic, is actually fight or flight. It's when you are ramping up, you are taking energy away from repairing, you are taking energy away from all sorts of stuff so that you can take action. Or you could be in the parasympathetic mode where you slow down and it's rest and repair. You rest and repair. And your body does well if you do both. But if you stay just in the sympathetic state, that is a real problem. You never rest and repair. And you actually, things can actually get carried away in your body because they're never getting fixed. Yeah. This doesn't just happen in our body, by the way. This happens in countries, just to let you know. Like if countries invest all their money on military, this is not some, by the way, anti-war speech. But the point is, if we invest all our tax dollars on military, we're not spending any of it on education. We're constantly, and yes, we're ready for a battle, but sometimes that battle doesn't, the infrastructure dies. We're not building roads. We're not educating people. We're not doing the rest to repair part. So you want some kind of balance in there, whatever you decide that balance is. But the fact is, we need both those. Well, bodies can do the same thing where they're ready for a fight. But there's all this stuff falling apart while they're waiting for that fight to happen. So we want to get people in the parasympathetic state. I just broke this down here. I think I put the slide in myself because I really didn't like all the other slides. You've got a central nervous system and a peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is broken down to the somatic and autonomic stuff. And the autonomic nervous system is broken down into the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system. Parasympathetic is your healing. That's why I kind of stacked it on down there. Yeah? Yeah. I'm just letting you absorb this for a second. By the way, when you're talking to clients, it really helps if you pause from time to time for them to absorb things. And it's not because people are dumb, but it actually takes your brain a long time to truly interpret a conversation. There's been some really fascinating studies on this. We all interpret conversation. Nobody's saying that. But a lot of our reactions to conversations come before we've actually completely analyzed what the person's saying. It takes a long time to interpret language. We guess at what they're going to say and respond to that, and then finally we interpret what they're going to say and see if we were correct in guessing it. But we don't wait long enough for that to happen. So pausing to let people absorb what you're saying if it's important, like how they should get undressed and things like that is important. Pausing gives them time to really process that. Otherwise they just kind of gloss right over it. Miss Smith.
Okay, so I'm just trying to piece this together in my head.
I don't blame you. I'm
So
serious.
they're afferent and efferent, which are sensory and motor.
Yes. Yes.
And then the autonomic, somatic, sympathetic, parasympathetic, those are all efferent.
Yeah, hold on one second. But yes, you are right. Thank you. They are all efferent. Well done. Yes.
What about afferent?
Afferent is really, afferent is the part of your peripheral nervous system that's just receiving information.
Okay, so there's no, differences in the nerves that are the receptor nerves? They're
No,
all
thank you.
receptor
Thank
nerves?
you. No, they're all, Afferent nerves are all just receiving information, that's it. There's no difference. The efferent nerves, there's all sorts of stuff. Some efferent nerves are doing automatic stuff. Some efferent nerves are doing stuff under your control, somatic stuff. Of those efferent nerves that are doing automatic stuff, some of those efferent nerves that are doing automatic stuff are doing it to get you ready for fight or flight, their sympathetic state. And some of those efferent nerves that are automatic are putting you in the parasympathetic state.
So the afferent are just very simple. The afferent are just receptors,
Yeah.
and receptors are receptors, and that's it.
Yes. And by the way, the wires are all the same. Like you couldn't look inside somebody's body and be like, that's an afferent nerve. I guess if we traced it down and saw where it was going, we could. But my point is, you'd be like, that's a nerve. Yeah. I think you understand it better than I do. You're going to teach the next.
I do not think so.
Yeah? Well, you fake it really well, so that's good. Go with that. Thank you, ma'am. So again, right? Brain, spinal cord, right? Please, 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 please. When you look at this, do not think these are all the nerves. These are giant bundles of nerves. If they showed you all the nerves, we would just be looking at a yellow body here. I'm not exaggerating. That's not a Tapscott exaggeration. If all these nerves branched out over and over and over again, which is what they do in your real body, you wouldn't see anything but nerves in this picture. They are showing you the highways. They are not showing you all the side streets and the sidewalks and the paths and the whatever. You have nerves going everywhere. If you don't feel that area. And I challenge you to take a needle and poke around your body and find an area you don't feel. With almost all of you, you're going to feel every single area. And that's the head of a needle. That means that head of a needle has to be hitting at least one nerve. And actually it's hitting several. It's hitting like a little nociceptor and a pressure sensor and all sorts of stuff. So you got nerves everywhere. So I don't like these pictures because I think sometimes people are like, oh yeah, I've got these. You do, but those are bundles of nerves you're looking at right now. It's split up into smaller bundles and smaller bundles and smaller bundles until they go down to singular nerve wires, which remember were 1,000th of the width of a piece of paper, and they literally go to every little square millimeter of your body, even smaller than that. Okay. Guess what nerves are wrapped in? What's the answer to everything?
Fascia.
Fascia. Fascia, which is connective tissue. But he's right, fascia. They really are wrapped in fascia because nerves are actually very delicate. And the fascia actually acts as insulation and helps the signals go along better. In fact, the fascia can, in certain ways, help it even jump signals in a good way. But it's fascia. Your muscle fiber happens to be wrapped in fascia. Your nerve fiber happens to be wrapped in fascia. Your bones happen to be wrapped in fascia. Your bones are filled with fascia. Everything's fascia. You're going to hear about myelin sheaths. These are insulation around nerves that again help to help signals move faster. You don't have to get into it that much. They honestly, myelin sheaths. There are some diseases, by the way, that damage myelin sheaths, and so people have problems with their nerves working. So sometimes you'll hear that. And the gaps between these myelin sheaths are called the nodes of Ranvier. That's how you pronounce that. The nodes of Ranvier. And the nodes of Ranvier are the gaps between the myelin sheaths where the signals can jump from one thing to another, which helps them move quicker down the nerve fibers. But again, not super important to us. It's not that it's not cool and all that kind of stuff, but we just need to know there are signals going down those nerve fibers. But if you hear about myelin sheaths, they are insulation around nerves that help the signals move faster, and there's gaps between them where the signals jump to, and those are the nodes of Ranvier. And that's the last time you're ever going to hear me say that. We're not going to worry about this yet, but this is a nerve body, this whole thing. It's got this end with all these projections here. They're dendrites. When they get set off, remember this nerve is charged with electricity. So when these guys get set off, it releases its electricity down this axion. That's what this is called. And sends it to something else. Usually, by the way, it sends it to another nerve. That's how the wire is made. It's a neuron after a neuron after a neuron. But eventually, like this is a efferent nerve because it's going to a muscle here. And it's actually going to release a signal here and some chemicals, and it's going to tell this muscle to contract. So nerve cells either connect to another nerve and another one, and that's a nerve fiber. That's the wire. But eventually they go to a sensor or a muscle or something. They're either going to pick up a signal at the end or they're going to tell something to do something at the end. That's it. Yeah. Not too important, actually, what I have underlined here. Although I did underline this because I think it's on your test tomorrow. So they're just showing you the direction the signal goes. The electricity kind of builds up here and shoots down this way. Something you'll never use in your practice. You just care, you know already actually when you touch your finger and you feel that sensation, that signal's going up to your brain, otherwise you wouldn't have felt it. And I know that when I move my finger, that signal came from my brain. My finger just didn't move on its own. I know it can in some situations, but in this case, I wanted to do this. Miss Langford.
Yes, Mr. Tefscott, I found a photo of the nervous system, the complete nervous system.
Yeah?
You want to see?
Yes, I want to see. Can you share your screen? Oh, I want to know if you could share your screen from there. Can you put up even closer?
Oh wait, I need to change the background.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, but respectfully, that's not all the nerves.
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah, but every place you see a gap would be a place you can't feel. And they're everywhere. I mean, everywhere. Those are still the big ones. Yeah. And I agree it's a lot. I couldn't agree with you more. I just want to be very clear that you can't feel any place you don't have a nerve going to. So they're everywhere. That's good. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. This doesn't matter at all. Sorry. Let me go back here one thing. Sorry, everybody. My keyboard is really not very helpful. All right. Okay. Nerves like to travel along the same pathways, by the way. This is kind of interesting. Nerves like to travel along the same pathways that your arteries and veins do. Now this kind of makes sense. When you see them tearing up the street, they don't just lay cable down there, right? They've got the sewer line down there and they've got the water line down there. You're going to dig one ditch and you're going to lay all the stuff in that same ditch. Your body is very much the same way. Your axillary region, straight in here, is an endangerment site because in that site is a big artery, a big vein, and your brachial plexus, a big bundle of nerves. They're all running together. So I'm only pointing this out to let you know that endangerment sites usually have arteries, veins, and nerves near the surface. That's why they're an endangerment site almost always. Because those things like to run together. You've already got a pathway there, and so they tend to like to run together. Picture of a nerve. They're giving names to all the different fascia around it. Nerves do have a blood supply. Do you know why nerves have a blood supply? I mean, they're living, of course, that's why they have a blood supply. But that sodium-potassium pump that gives them electrical charge, it takes energy to run the sodium-potassium pump. It takes ATP to run it. Who brings the ATP to the nerve? Your circulatory system. The same thing that brings ATP to all your other cells in your body so they can perform work. The sodium-potassium pump can't work if it doesn't have energy. So, if you ever know when you're really low on blood sugar, and it's not just like your muscles are weak, but you're a little shaky and stuff, you don't have enough energy going to your nervous system right there. And your nervous system uses a boatload of energy. Your nervous system uses about 25% of the energy in your body. It takes a lot to run your brain and your nervous system. It takes a lot. Lower functioning animals that don't think don't really need nearly as much food. A lot of your food is getting eaten up by your brain. Really takes quite a bit. Okay, I told you this already. Electrical signals are traveled along the neuron, right? And that signal then goes to another neuron to keep on going down the line, or a muscle, or it might go to a gland and say release chemicals and spark off the endocrine system to release chemicals that go floating around your body to give other messages to cells. We talked briefly about the sodium-potassium pump, and it is the mechanism that keeps the different charged ions in different sides of the cell wall to keep this polarization. Polarization is kind of a fancy name for a battery in a way. Battery has a negative and a positive side. So do these things. It's really the same concept. I'm not kidding. In fact, a battery has a little thing separating those two sides from each other, and then when they get mixed back together, they release the energy. Very, very much like your nerves. Very much. So you'll probably never hear about sodium-potassium pumps after we talk about the nervous system. But the point is there is a mechanism in there that's creating that charge. And it takes ATP. It takes sugar, ultimately, to kind of run that thing. And I say sugar, by the way, because your carbohydrates are broken down into sugars. I don't want you to start running out and just eating spoonfuls of sugar so that your nervous system's doing well. You can, but it's really not necessary. You can eat a potato, too. We said they have all or nothing response, and that is true. They are a light switch. Your nerves, whether they're picking up a sensation or they're telling something to do something, it's on or off. It's not kind of on. There's no dimmer switch. I either have the sensor in my fingertip telling me it's getting pressure or I don't. How do I know that there's more pressure or less? Because more of them go off. My brain goes, oh my gosh, we got 500 of these things going off. It must be really a lot getting pushed here. But the fact is, they're all or nothing. It sends a signal to tell a muscle to flex. It's telling that fiber, give it all you got. And then my brain's like, well, we need to give it even more. Well, then it's going to send other signals down other nerves to other fibers to tell them to fire too, to give them more. Miss Cuppage, please.
Is that just for the somatic nerves, not the autonomic nerves?
No, it's even for the autonomic nerves. They are all or nothing. So when your brain wants to get more done, it has to send more signals down more wires.
Gotcha.
Yeah. In a way, you can look at it this way. It'd be like if every light in this room was one light bulb hooked to one light switch. You can control the lighting in the room as though you have a dimmer switch, but you're not doing a dimmer switch. You're flipping on light switches to get it as bright or as not bright as you want. It's one signal, one light kind of thing. Does that make sense? Good. Okay. Cool. Somebody else raised their hand that I missed? Miss Tops, you're unmuted, but I can't hear you. Try again.
Try.
It's okay. Sorry. If you want to try again, let me know. Just interrupt if you want to. So that's all or nothing. Refractory period just means it takes a while for the nerve to build back up the charge again so it can fire again. And so you can exhaust nerves, but you've got other nerves that kick in usually. But you could exhaust nerves where they can't fire again. And it takes a second for the sodium-potassium pumps to create a difference in ions to build up a charge again. That's all. I want to explain to you guys about P&F stretching, but I want to wait a minute. So I'm not ignoring part of this slide. I'm going to explain it here in a minute. There is a gap between your nerves, and it's there for a reason. If we remember, the nerves were these little batteries. There's a gap between them, and we call this the synapse. We want a gap between them because if we touch all the batteries to each other, they all fire off. And we don't want them to do that. So we have a little gap between them that there has to be enough electricity and enough chemical response to jump that gap. And so when you send a signal down it, it's enough to jump the gap. But because these batteries all have a little bit of charge, you want a little bit of gap between them. and that's the synaptic gap. You have this in your brains too. And when you guys study, when I ask you what are the three calves, and you're like, oh my God, he asks this all the time. I know the three calves are the plantaris and the soleus and the gastrocnemius. I forgot the three calves. Anyway, those three muscles, believe it or not, in your brain, your little neurons get closer and closer and closer together, and that gap becomes an easier jump each time, and that's how memory is formed. It's very cool. They literally change. Your brain is plastic, and they literally change. That's why I believe in training and not teaching, because we train them and they become close to each other. And we all work in associative ways. So we associate things together. When I say, what are the three calf muscles? Those are some neurons in your brain. What are the three calf muscles? And you've got some other neurons that have the correct answer, and they get closer and closer together until it becomes just automatic for you. Now, we do this with everything. This is where PTSD comes from. So it's not always a good thing, but we wire stuff together, you know. That's what we do. We try to make associations. Yeah. Anyway, that's called the synapse. It's meant to keep your nerves from firing when they shouldn't fire. And if they do fire when they shouldn't fire, that's sometimes where you get that random pain from that we started out this whole discussion on. So, because they fire off, you're like, ow! And you just send a signal to your brain maybe that you have pain and you don't. Some people have too much synaptic fluid and they jump from one synapse to another, by the way, and they'll have a little bit of a tremor. Tremors are usually because their nerves are firing too well. They're jumping that synapse when they don't want them to, sending stuff on down the line. At the end of these things, what happens is this electrical charge ultimately releases chemicals that then ultimately tells a muscle fiber or another nerve to fire. That's why it's called an electrochemical response. It is truly electricity running down a nerve, but electricity releases a chemical. Chemicals in your body are messengers. They're just talking to other parts of your body. And they actually tell something to fire. They release a thing, and this thing gets those chemicals and goes, oh, message, fire. Either fire another nerve or fire off the muscle. So it's an electrochemical signal. Yeah. Okay. So we said the central nervous system consists of the brain and the skull. Around this area of your skull is the meninges, which is a coating around your brain and skull. And you've heard of people getting meningitis before. It's an infection of that coating around it. It's deadly, by the way. I mean, people survive it, but it's deadly. It's deadly because there's no worse place to get an infection than inside your brain and skull, inside your brain and spinal cord. And your meninges are meant to protect that area. And they even are very careful about letting blood flow through. They've got to get blood in there because those areas need it, but they're very careful about anything they let in there. And so meningitis, itis, is inflammation of the meninges, is an infection that's actually gotten into that area, and it can be very, very dangerous. You don't have to know all this other stuff here, but that's important to know. And it's an extra layer of protection to keep your brain and spinal cord from getting ill, you know? Kind of cool. All right. We're not doing this today, at least. Bear with me. I want to get to something else here before we get to all this stuff. Here are all the nerves coming out the spinal cord, right? They come out each single vertebrae coming out. But remember, they don't stop here. They branch out to more and more and more and more nerves. These are all your facial nerves. Don't worry about that. Sorry. Trying to get to... Do we have that back there? Here we go. I love this picture. This picture tells you what I told you already. It is a picture of where the nerves from certain parts of the spine go to feed. It essentially says that the nerves from your neck feed your arm, the nerves from your thoracic region go to your thoracic region, the nerves from your lumbar region go down the front of your leg, the nerves from your sacral region go down the back of your leg. It is true that I lied to you a tiny bit, that like one vertebrae down the neck feeds a little bit of the back of your arm, but it's still up in this neck area. And it literally means this. Let's look at this chart here. You don't need to memorize these numbers at all. You need to remember the thing I told you about cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral. But it literally means that when I feel pain in this finger here, that pain follows nerves that go up to my vertebrae of C7. And then up, please go back. And then up my spine to my head. It says that when I experience pain on the top of my foot, like you drop a rock on top of my foot, which is not very nice, by the way, but you did it anyway. You dropped a rock on the top of my foot. It went through nerves that went all the way back up to L5, lumbar 5, entered into my spine, went up my spine, and went to my head. Which means that if I pinch L5, it could feel like pain in my foot. Now, it's very hard to tell if somebody's pinching something at L5 or L4, which is why I just gave you generalities. There are plenty, trust me. You don't want to get that precise as a massage therapist because you need to rub this whole area. It could be connected tension here. But the point is, the front of the legs go to the lumbar region. The back of the legs go to the sacral region. The wires from the back of the legs all have to come up the back of the legs, go into the sacrum, run up the spine, go to the head. This chart tells you everything I just said. Hopefully, and if you just remember this, honestly, please, it will make you such a better massage therapist. And I did this for you instead of make you memorize and the nervation of every single muscle when it's just not necessary. Miss Smith.
Why do we neglect the face muscles?
I'm so sorry. Why do we what?
Neglect the face muscles.
Oh, you mean why do we neglect them in massage, or why did I neglect them here?
Both. Like, where do those come from?
Those come.
And in massage.
Yeah, they come from out from underneath the skull. So they don't come out from the spinal cord. That's why I neglected them. Now, they come from out from underneath the skull, and you've got all these muscles that kind of come out from underneath the skull and feed your face, or come from inside the skull and feed your face. But you make a very interesting point about why you said both. So I'll also answer your second question, because I do sometimes kind of neglect the facial muscles, and there's some reasons you might not want to. So there are solid scientific studies that say if you do this for 2 minutes a day, your mood elevates. So I'm heading somewhere with this crazy talk here. What happens when I do this is I have to activate some of the same muscles I use to smile. Now, I'm not smiling, but my brain actually doesn't know that. And it's a proven fact that my brain actually reacts to my facial expressions. My facial expressions show how I'm feeling, but my facial expressions also make me feel how I'm feeling. It can go both ways. We are utterly sure of this. And so I believe rubbing somebody's face and relieving stress from those muscles helps tell their brain they're not stressed. You know, when they're looking like this and you help to slowly smooth out their brow, they start to actually think they're relaxed, because they are. So you're right, Ms. Smith. They should not be overlooked. They should not be overlooked. They are not structural muscles. The muscles in your face are not structural. I'm not talking about your jaw, but your face up here are not structural, but they can affect your mood. And that goes back to the parasympathetic state. And so they are extremely important. And it's something you might all want to practice too. Try to practice smiling. It does make you feel better. It also makes your clients feel better because they see somebody smiling at them. But it really does affect your mood. It really does. They've also done some amazing studies about people that just stand differently and things like that, and the reactions they get from the world around them. So yes. Did you want to say something else, Miss Smith?
Is there a reason that you don't necessarily like? What's your personal opinion on it? I guess. Like, do you emphasize facial massage in your massages?
No, I don't, but I honestly think, but I still do some. I think part of it, Miss Smith, is I don't think you should follow my lead on this one. You know, there's some stuff where I'm like, do it my way, I'm right. And I still could be wrong, but I'm just sure I'm right. This one, I don't feel I'm right. I think that I was a male massage therapist that started massaging 27 years ago, and my whole stuff is therapeutic. And I think maybe I felt awkward, but I also think people might have felt awkward coming to me if I was doing kind of a gentle face massage to them. They kind of think, I'm going to go to this guy and get beat up, right? And so that's what I kind of specialized in. I do try to create a really nurturing environment, but the point is, I just don't think I thought along those lines. If I had to do it all over again, I might actually put more emphasis in facial massage. Absolutely. Especially if your client loves it. Now, I do some facial massage, and when I have clients that love it, I can do it, and I believe in it. But I just am like, okay, I got to get to the feet, I got to get to the sacrum, I got to get to the back, and you just start, and I got to do the neck. I'm really into the neck, and you just start running out of time. And I have found in the past, people wanted me to get to other things like their shoulders and stuff. Okay. But yes, you could make a strong argument to not do it that way. I am not a proponent of you guys copying that method. I can easily see a reason to put in facial massage. And I would do it fairly firmly too, not because you're trying to do deep tissue, but you really are trying to soften out these lines and pull this stuff back down and create ease in their face. Yeah. I think it would make a lot of sense. I love the way you're thinking. Mr. Bigelow.
Yeah, I just had a kind of a question / comment. So looking at this diagram, like the genital area is actually controlled by like the sacrum, even though it's on the anterior part of the body.
Yep.
Okay.
Some of the nerves from the sacrum come out from underneath the sacrum. And so don't quote me, I don't know, but I suspect they're actually coming from the backside directly to the reproductive organs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it does, I mean, I know you know this, but it doesn't matter because we don't rub that area. Please, make sure, don't. Yeah. So anyway, but you're right. I just think they're getting fed from the backside, directly through. Boom. And it makes sense because actually your genitalia and your rectum and all that are kind of all tied together nerve-wise. So I'm sure it's all just one package kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway, don't forget this picture. I think we should release homework and stuff. You don't have a lot, but it'd be nice if you got it done. The whole goal of this week was to have a parasympathetic week where we stay calm together and we go into our 10-day vacation and come back refreshed. So let me get into your homework really quick. You do not have a lot, but I think you'll be able to finish it here. So bear with me 1 second. Always takes a second for my computer to pop up here. Let's see.